Ladies and gentlemen, before we get started, this podcast is brought to you by Final Form Supplements. Final Form Supplements is a supplement brand with honesty labeling. So the labeling in supplements is Wild Wild West. Sometimes labels aren't honest. They have things in there that's on in there. We don't have to worry about that with Final Form Supplements. We got everything you need from protein powder, creatine, skin care, soap for your skin, handcrafted soap, and we have all kinds of things. Go to finalformsubs.com, that's SUPPS, finalformsubs.com. Use promo code COACHSTRIB, all caps, no space. Get 10% off your order. And make sure you like, comment, subscribe on whichever video you're watching here at Ivy Talks Podcast Network. And enjoy the show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the WNBA coverage. If it's your first time, go ahead and subscribe so you can stay in tune with things going down here at Ivy Talks Podcast Network. If you're coming back for another episode, welcome back. We are getting into it. There are 3 weeks left in the WNBA season before we kick off in the playoffs. So standings are going to be very important. Statistical leaders fighting for point champ, rebound champ, etc. is going to be very important. And coming down to like Rookie of the Year, which is probably going to be a big conversation for people. So let's get straight into it. So getting into the standings, we're going to standings first. In the East, we got New York Liberty at 1, Connecticut Suns at 2, Indiana Fever at 3, Chicago Skies at 4, Atlanta Dream at 5, Washington Mystics at 6. In the West, we got the Minnesota Lynx at 1, Seattle Storm at 2, Las Vegas Aces at 3, Phoenix Mercury at 4, Dallas Wings at 5, and the LA Sparks at 6. We're going to come back to the standings in a little bit. Let's go over statistical leaders. At points per game, Aja Wilson at 26.6. Rebounds per game at 12.9. She's got a little bit of separation, but Aja Wilson is right behind her at 11.9 with 1 point difference. Assists, we have Caitlin Clark at 8.3. Right behind her is Alyssa Thomas at 7.9. Steals per game, Agumbale at 2.5. Nafisa Collier at 2.1, and blocks per game, Aja Wilson 2.7. So, real quick, in the East, we have obviously the Fever and Chicago Skies that I've talked about pretty much the entire season. They've been going back and forth between, being one game up, one game behind each other, kind of flip-flopping. But here, kind of towards the tail end of the season, Indiana Fever's kind of stayed above Chicago Skies, even though that rivalry is starting to become a really good one here. But Indiana Fever is starting to get a little bit of separation. They're 2 games ahead of Chicago Skies, which is the most they've been ahead all season. And so they're trying to solidify their spot at number 3. They're not going to catch the Connecticut Suns. They are like 9 games behind Connecticut Suns. So New York Liberty is 3 games ahead of Connecticut, and Connecticut is 9 games ahead of Indiana Fever. So 1 and 2 are pretty much going to be set in stone here for the Liberty and Connecticut Suns. They're 1 and 2. Indiana Fever, Chicago Skies. There's still enough games left where Chicago could go on a little win streak. They could potentially get back in the fight for the 3rd spot. But as of right now, Indiana Fever has built a little bit of a cushion. And obviously, they're going to try to continue to keep winning games to build that cushion and hold that 3rd spot. But interestingly enough, the Atlanta Dream is slowly coming to the picture. So Atlanta Dream's only 3 games behind the Indiana Fever. So Atlanta Dream is 1 game behind Chicago Skies. They're actually creeping up and could potentially, the Chicago Skies could drop to 5th with the Atlanta Dreams coming back. Early in the season, Atlanta Dreams was sitting there hanging around at the 3rd spot, and they kind of dropped down to the 5th. Now they're slowly kind of figuring out towards the tail end of the season. They're creeping up. So 3 through 5 is just a 3-game difference between all 3 of them. So Atlanta Dream kind of peeks back in the picture for that 3rd spot. In the West, the Aces and the Las Vegas Aces and Seattle Storm are neck and neck. Seattle Storm's at 2, Las Vegas Aces at 3, but they have the same amount of wins. So I think it's going to come down to who has the better record at the end from now to the end of the season, who plays better basketball. They both have 18 wins. Las Vegas Aces has 11 losses to Seattle Storm's 10 losses, obviously because Las Vegas Aces played more games. But when it's all said and done, they're neck and neck, and it's going to come down to who can go on a 2 or 3 game win streak here in the next 3 weeks and be a little more consistent. Obviously, I am a Las Vegas Aces fan because of Aja Wilson, Kelsey Plum, Jackie Young, Becky Hammond as the head coach. So they have, in my opinion, the best offense in terms of just talent on the team. So I do think they have the ability to do that, but Seattle Storm is no pushover either. Ogunbowale is playing absolutely phenomenal. They got other players that are playing great for Seattle Storm. Seattle Storm they play like a well-oiled machine. So it's going to be interesting to see this 2 and 3 spot fight it out. The Minnesota Lynx, they're up 4 games between Seattle and Las Vegas. So they have built themselves a little cushion. They're probably going to finish there at the 1. So it's going to come down to Seattle and the Aces fighting back and fighting for that number 2 spot. And Phoenix Mercury creeping back. Phoenix Mercury's 2 games behind the Storm and Aces. So Phoenix Mercury can get something going here in the next 3 weeks. They could potentially be in contention for that 3rd spot. I think it comes down to the last week. I think the second spot is going to come down to like the last 3 games, the last week of the season, but we will see there. Now we got a handful of shout outs again. Starting off, Angel Reese, 2nd rookie player to have multiple 20 rebound games. Last time was the only other player is Tina Charles in 2010. And obviously Angel Reese is her rebounding game. I do understand the context. A lot of her rebounds, or I won't say a lot, a good amount of her rebounds are her getting her own rebounds on missed shots. It's conversation for another day, whatever. I don't want to get the context of that, but just statistically, she is the 2nd rookie to have multiple 20-point games. She had like 44 rebounds or something like that, or low 40s. She had like 40-something rebounds in 2 games back to back. So she's a rebounding machine. Shout out Maya Moore. She gets her jersey retired for the Minnesota Lynx. Maya Moore is a 4-time WNBA champ, WNBA MVP, Finals MVP, 6-time All-Star, 3-time All-Star MVP, 2014 scoring champ, 3-time Olympic gold medalist, and the 2011 Rookie of the Year. Phenomenal career, phenomenal season. First ballot Hall of Famer for sure. Maya Moore, salutes to you. Shout out. Also, shout out, no surprise here, I think I've shouted her out. There's a handful of people I've shouted out every week. Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, and Angel Wilson pretty much. Caitlin Clark, fastest player to reach 500 points and 200 assists, and that's in 29 games. So we're starting to see Caitlin Clark not only score, but she's also assisting, which I don't think people were really giving her props in her game. I know I talked about earlier on, the turnovers was a big concern for her, but if you watch the games, the turnovers weren't necessarily her making bad decisions. It was who she was passing it to isn't ready. I honestly think her passing was at a higher level than what these other players are used to. So they weren't ready for the speed that she's putting on the ball, the looks that she's getting. I don't think a lot of these players were used to it at first, but they've started to figure it out, and the turnovers have gotten a lot better for Caitlin Clark. Next, Angel Wilson, she hits 4,500 career points. Angel Wilson obviously leading the league in points per game. I think she's the front runner for MVP I will be voting for her as MVP. She, I believe, will most likely, she has the best odds to win MVP this year. So she is absolutely playing on another level. Another player that's in the MVP conversation, Napheesa Collier. Shout out to Napheesa Collier. First player to have at least 25 points, at least 15 rebounds, and at least 5 assists on 70% shooting. She had 27 points, 18 rebounds, 5 assists on 73.3% shooting. Shout out to Napheesa Collier. She is playing absolutely phenomenal. She's in a lot of statistical leaders as like 2 or 3, so she is playing great basketball as well. Shout out Jaquel Jones. She had 13 points and 11 rebounds, which makes her the 8th player in WNBA history to reach 90 career double-doubles. So she is doing it not only in putting the ball in the hoop, but as well as rebounding the ball. And then 2 more shout outs. Shout out to the Connecticut Suns, who clinched a playoff spot. Where at is not official yet, but most likely that number 2 spot, like I said. And obviously, shout out Minnesota Lynx. They clinched a spot. And what that means by clinched a spot, that means even if they lose out the rest of the season, they are still in the playoffs. That's what that means. But you still want to keep winning to either keep your number 1 spot, because right now they're at number 1. They'll probably finish number 1. But you obviously want to keep winning to keep your spot where you're at, or potentially move up. But even if they win out, so New York Liberty, Connecticut Suns, and Minnesota Lynx, they have clinched their spots. So no matter what happens the rest of the season, they are for sure in the playoffs. So that is going to do it for this episode of the WNBA coverage. We have 3 weeks left. I'm excited to see how the playoff picture is going to pan out and getting into the playoffs. But that is all. We'll catch you guys next time.